Hi, Carl Trelevin, back to talk with you as to why I think Christians ought to love Charles Darwin and the Big Bang Theory. Now, you recall previously I said that it's actually understandable why Christians have been skeptical about this. And the reason they've been skeptical is because, at least on the surface, Darwin and the Big Bang seem to be at odds with what the Bible says. And it's understandable then Christians would be doubtful. But I'm suggesting let's look at it from a slightly different and unexpected perspective. And from that perspective, I think you, like me, will find that you actually like what Darwin's saying. In fact, you'll not only like it, you'll love it. And I come up with 5 reasons why I think you will, in fact, love Darwin as well as the Big Bang Theory. So let's go and take a look at these. And fundamentally, the reason I think you'll love that is because these theories actually reinforce things you as a Christian already believe. Let's look at each one of them. Well, the first 2 of them actually are fundamental Christian doctrines. And oftentimes I ask people, what is the most basic Christian doctrine that there is? And I get different answers, but ultimately I don't typically get what I think is the correct answer. And I think the correct answer is the Garden of Eden, that mankind is sinful. The problem is, what's the evidence of that? Well, we're expected to believe that we as Christians, when we're born, inherit the sin based upon what Adam and Eve, 2 people who lived who knows however long ago, committed. But what's the mechanism of transmission? How is it that they did something, who knows, 50, 100, 200,000 years ago, and it gets transmitted to us? Well, it's a fundamental idea in Christianity, but not a good explanation. Darwin, surprisingly, provides a realistic and robust explanation for that occurring. That's a good reason to believe in it. And the second reason, actually, is that the Garden of Eden probably actually occurred. Now, in the last couple hundred years, Christians have become skeptical of that, saying, well, it didn't really happen. It actually was an allegory. But for many Christians, the idea of the Garden of Eden being an allegory really just kind of pulls the rug out from under the entire concept. I'm suggesting, based upon Darwin, it's actually a realistic possible event. Now, of course, I can't prove it, but the evidence suggests, based upon Darwin, that the Garden of Eden is a very realistic possibility. And in my mind, it happened. So that's the second reason. Now, the third reason moves to something that's important to Christians, but actually is something that causes most of us to kind of squirm in our seats, and that's evangelism. Now, you know, based on the Great Commission, that we as Christians are commanded to go and evangelize and spread the word. But even very committed Christians find that's really a hard thing to do. It's really tough. And it's especially difficult when you run across people who are well educated and whose immediate thought is that the Bible is just rubbish. It's just a bunch of fairy tales. So if what you're trying to do is persuade someone based upon something they think is a bunch of rubbish, you're going to have a really hard time. Well, based upon Darwin and the Big Bang, actually creates a bridge to help you get to where you want to go. In a funny way, suddenly it becomes the way to help get especially well-educated non-Christians to the point they might want to consider what the Bible has to say. So in effect, Darwin and the Big Bang become a way to help the Christian with evangelism. Another reason to believe in it. The fourth reason has to do with schools. And no doubt you're aware that at least for 100 years, what is taught in school can be problematic. In fact, what kind of science is taught, and it's been argued endlessly, and unfortunately Christians have come out on the short end of that argument, which has left many, many Christians very uneasy. They're not sure they want to have their children taught about Darwin because the conclusion they've come to is, well, it's bad and it'll cause people not to want to be Christians. Well, surprisingly, based upon what I've done, it's actually a good idea. And in fact, I propose a way to teach science in the public schools that will not only be acceptable to Christians, it'll be acceptable to non-Christians, and actually will show that what non-Christians have been saying is problematic. You may be surprised, but I think if you're a Christian, you will like seeing it. Finally, the fifth reason that you want to embrace Darwin and the Big Bang is how to deal with secular humanists. In our society, increasingly, people are embracing the idea of secular humanism. And unfortunately, Christians oftentimes don't have good answers of how to deal with that. And that's especially true when you know that secular humanists tend to view the Bible as rubbish. But based upon what I put together in this book, I come up with a series of arguments that Christians can use as a counterweight and against secular humanism. So in summary, 5 reasons, 2 based upon Christian doctrine, 1 based on evangelism, 1 based upon what's taught in the public schools, 1 based on how to deal with secular humanism. But ultimately, 5 solid reasons Christians ought to not simply accept what Darwin's saying is, that they ought to love what Darwin and the Big Bang are saying. In future posts, we'll talk more of these in detail. Thank you.